President Trump's abrupt departure from the G7 summit caught global attention, especially since he cited a much bigger reason than negotiating a ceasefire between Israel and Iran. Dr. Reynolds, can you help us unpack the immediate context of this decision?
Certainly. The G7 summit traditionally serves as a platform for multilateral consensus on major issues. Trump's early exit, cloaked in ambiguity, instantly shifted the focus from collective diplomacy to his personal agenda, raising numerous questions about underlying motivations.
That's a perfect segue to our SWOT analysis. Let's begin by dissecting the strengths this move may have offered Trump, especially in terms of signaling decisive leadership.
Absolutely. Leaving early can project an image of urgency and prioritization. In crisis management theory, swift action often equates to strong leadership, particularly when the leader claims to be addressing issues of global significance.
By making a high-profile exit, Trump appeared to take charge rather than remain bogged down in prolonged diplomatic talks. How might this approach resonate with his domestic and international audiences?
For his political base, decisive action aligns with his America First narrative. Internationally, it signals that the U.S. isn't willing to compromise when urgent matters arise. It's reminiscent of crisis playbooks where leaders must act swiftly, even at the cost of ruffling feathers.
But could this also set a precedent for future summits, where leaders opt out instead of negotiating?
Potentially, yes. It could embolden other leaders to prioritize national interests, but it also risks undermining the collaborative spirit that the G7 is built upon.
Moving to strategic positioning, Trump's exit allowed him to sidestep potentially contentious debates. Could you elaborate on the benefits and risks of this tactic?
Certainly. By leaving before complex bilateral talks, he avoids public disagreements that could weaken U.S. bargaining positions. However, it's a double-edged sword. While it shields him from immediate criticism, it may leave allies feeling sidelined.
Would you say this move is more about optics or substance?
A bit of both. Optically, it asserts control, but substantively, it forfeits the chance to shape agreements in real time, which can have long-term ramifications.
Trump's ambiguous reasoning refusing to specify the much bigger issues seems calculated. How does this ambiguity function as a media strategy?
Ambiguity invites speculation, keeping the media cycle focused on Trump's next move rather than the G7's outcomes. It's akin to leaving a cliffhanger in a TV show, ensuring public attention remains fixed on him.
Are there historical parallels where leaders have used similar tactics to control narratives?
Yes. Nixon's madman theory deliberately cultivated unpredictability for strategic advantage. While the contexts differ, both approaches aim to keep adversaries and allies off balance.
Let's address the weaknesses. The lack of transparency has fueled widespread speculation. What are the diplomatic consequences of offering vague explanations at such high-profile events?
A lack of clarity undermines trust. Allies like France and Germany may interpret the move as disregard for multilateralism, potentially eroding the goodwill required for future cooperation.
Could this also affect domestic confidence in leadership?
Absolutely. Polls consistently show that transparency correlates with public trust. Ambiguity, especially in foreign policy, often raises concerns about hidden agendas.
French President Macron speculated that Trump's exit might have been tied to brokering a Middle East ceasefire. How do such speculations impact U.S.-EU relations?
They introduce uncertainty. When allies are left guessing, it complicates joint policymaking. For example, NATO's 2019 summit saw similar tensions when unilateral decisions disrupted planned discussions.
Could prolonged ambiguity cause long-term shifts in alliance dynamics?
Indeed, if allies perceive the U.S. as unreliable, they may pursue independent strategies, potentially weakening transatlantic unity.
Trump also canceled key meetings with Mexico and Ukraine. What are the immediate and longer-term implications of such missed opportunities?
In the immediate term, it stalls progress on critical issues like trade and security. For instance, canceled talks with Mexico could delay migration agreements affecting both nations.
And in the long run?
Repeated postponements create a backlog, eroding momentum. It's like missing foundational rehearsals before a major performance. Eventual outcomes may suffer.
Turning to opportunities, Trump's rapid return to Washington may bolster his domestic standing. How does timing play into political strategy here?
Timing is crucial. By swiftly addressing urgent domestic matters, Trump positions himself as responsive and proactive. This can energize his base ahead of elections, especially if he frames his actions as putting America's needs first.
Could this strategy backfire with undecided voters?
If the public perceives it as neglecting global responsibilities, yes, but with effective messaging, the narrative can be steered toward decisive leadership.
If his exit relates to the Israel-Iran conflict, what potential does this hold for reshaping geopolitical dynamics in the Middle East?
Should he broker a breakthrough, the U.S. could reclaim its role as a peace architect. Historical precedents, like Camp David in 1978, show that high-stakes intervention can redefine power balances if successful.
What are the risks if the effort fails or escalates conflict?
Failure could intensify regional instability, drawing in more actors and potentially harming U.S. credibility as a mediator.
Before leaving, Trump signed a major trade agreement with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer. What does this signal for post-Brexit economic relations?
It's a strategic win. The agreement could boost bilateral trade by an estimated $20 billion annually, according to the Peterson Institute. It demonstrates Trump's commitment to forging new partnerships, offsetting criticism of his multilateral approach.
How might this influence future trade negotiations with other countries?
It sets a precedent. Other nations may seek similar deals, but it could also complicate existing multilateral frameworks if bilateralism becomes the norm.
Let's close with threats. If Trump's bigger reason involves military action, what are the potential global and domestic consequences?
Military escalation would heighten tensions in the Middle East, risking broader conflict. Domestically, support may rally initially, as seen post 9/11, but prolonged engagement historically erodes public approval, as in Iraq.
Does the lack of transparency increase these risks?
Absolutely. Uncertainty breeds instability in markets and diplomatic circles. The IMF warns that unpredictable U.S. actions can trigger volatility across allied economies.
So as we reflect on this, it's clear that every strength in Trump's decision carries a corresponding risk of true double-edged sword in global leadership.
Precisely. The ultimate impact will depend on how swiftly and skillfully the administration follows through on its next moves, both at home and abroad.